Hey, I've got a question for you. How does the arm know how much energy to apply to each different shot? Probably a question you got from me is, what the hell does this have to do with singing? I'll answer both questions, but let's go inside.
I'll explain what's going on. When we toss a basketball, or anything for that matter, we have what's called depth perception. It's an instinct every human has. And it's just the ability for your eye to kind of suss out how much distance there is. The brain will read how much the ball weighs, do all the computations, send that information to the arm, and after lots of practice, the ball will go in the hoop, or you can toss your car keys to somebody. And that's a good example. Let's say you toss your car keys to somebody. The chances are pretty good it's not going to go over their head or too far in front of them. If it's a very casual thing, it's a casual event, unconscious, you trust your reflex, tossing a set of car keys to a friend, simple event. But making a foul shot with the score tied, that's not a casual event anymore. And that's why we celebrate sports heroes, is because they're able to set aside the anxiety of the situation and go right back to what is a very instinctive, very simple event once you've practiced it in. Now with singing, what we have is called breath perception. And it's essentially the same thing. When we have an intention to make a sound, whether it's a high note, low, soft, loud, doesn't matter, whatever the intended sound is going to be, your brain knows to send down information to all of the corresponding muscles, the larynx, and all the breathing muscles, and therefore the right amount of air, the balanced amount of air, will be presented if we trust the event. And that's the key. And so let's say in a conversation where you're unconscious about your voice use, somebody asks you if you want to go out tonight. What's your reply going to be? Sure. How much air does that take? Here's how you're not going to reply. Hey, you want to go out tonight? Sure. Yet, a lot of times, that's the kind of load we present to a small vocal line when singing. So us singers would do ourselves a very good service if we would follow suit of what athletes do. Every day, all day, what athletes do is train the fundamentals, because they know it's that basic trust of knowing what the ball feels like, knowing what it feels like for the ball to go into the hoop. There's a reference that your brain is building, a real familiarity, and that's what they lean on in the heat of a game. And that's exactly what us singers should be leaning on in the heat of performance, that it should still come down to a casual event, and it's just all up to our intention. What sounds we want to make should be what dictates how much breath is presented underneath the vocal folds.
Something else we singers can borrow from basketball players is the fact of they focus on what's working and build from there. For instance, if their long shot isn't falling for them, what they do is come in closer to the basket. It really helps them to see the ball going in the hoop, and then they can gradually work their way back. So if your high notes, if your big, loud high notes aren't feeling good, start with something that does feel good. Start with the little shots.
So here's a good exercise that kind of borrows from that basketball wisdom of start with something simple that you can do and expand upon it. It's also really good exercise for helping your brain map out exactly what it feels like to have your lungs at 100% capacity, 75, 50, 25. It's a good reference for you, and therefore you'd be less likely to overcompensate or undercompensate a line in a song. It's very simple. You just sing one scale. But at the end of the scale, the game I want you to play is to make sure you only have one more scale's worth of air left in your lungs. Let's try it. So right there, that sort of ghost scale I followed with, I had to use too many muscles to squeeze out some residual air. And it's not a good idea to sing a vocal phrase in a song and let your body be that collapsed at the end, unless that's exactly the sound you want in your voice. As there's no disguising that sound of running out of air. It takes over your vocal muscles. It holds your throat hostage. So like I said, you want to be left over with about one scale's left of air. But you don't want to overcompensate, so you have, 5 scales worth of air left in your lungs after singing a simple phrase. So let's mix it up here a little bit and see how you do. One scale. E. 3. There, I'm done. So all I did was take in a proportionate amount of air to sing 3 scales with maybe a fourth left over. I stopped at 3 so it didn't affect the sound of my voice. Let's try 9 scales. So I had just enough to finish one more scale, and that's my goal. So now I know whether I'm going to sing a long line or a short line, I can begin to trust my breath perception, that my brain will dial in reflexively, instinctively dial in the proportionate amount of air. And like I said before, I'm only gonna allow that to happen if I trust that. And there's where all that practice comes in as so incredibly useful.
I just can't stress how important it is to work on those basic fundamentals. That should take up most of your practice time rather than the tricky stuff. As every athlete knows, the more you practice, the luckier you get. I'm Mark Baxter for Lesson.com.